There's something buried at the bottom of the ocean, and it was never meant to be found. 2094. A deep-sea expedition descends into the Mariana Trench, expecting nothing more than rock and silence. Instead, they find something impossible, an ancient civilization, still alive, still waiting. But before they can understand what they've uncovered, the Earth itself starts to shift, because something down there just woke up. And if they don't stop it in time, nothing on the surface will survive. 2094, the world had changed. The maps people once trusted were now relics, reminders of a time when coastlines didn't shift like breathing organisms. Rising tides had swallowed entire cities. Nations had fractured under the weight of dwindling resources, and power belonged not to governments, but to corporations, mega conglomerates that owned everything from drinking water to the air filtration systems, keeping the last safe zones livable. And somewhere beneath it all, the Earth was rumbling. Dr. Ethan Graves sat alone in the dimly lit control room of Deep Horizon, an underwater research facility positioned precariously near the Mariana Trench. The glow of data streams flickered across his face, casting deep shadows under his tired eyes. He barely noticed. His mind wasn't in the room, it was 5 years in the past. In a collapsed research station, buried beneath miles of rock and ocean pressure, where Sarah had died. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating before pulling up the latest seismic readings. The numbers stared back at him. Impossible. The trench was shifting rapidly, but the pattern, the oscillations weren't random. They looked eerily familiar. His breath hitched. He reached for the old drive, Sarah's, a relic of her last days, salvaged from the wreckage of her final expedition. He had spent years trying to decrypt her final logs, searching for answers about her death, and yet the pieces had never quite fit. Until now, with a few keystrokes, he overlaid Sarah's last recorded data, set over the current seismic readings, a perfect match. His blood ran cold. Sarah had seen this before. Whatever was happening now, she had known. She had tried to warn them. A low tremor shuddered through the facility, rattling the walls like a warning. Alarms flickered to life in red pulses. Ethan exhaled slowly, his hands curling into fists. He wasn't just looking at another geological anomaly. He was looking at something Sarah had died for, and now it was waking up. The Neptune 9 loomed in the docking bay, its sleek, reinforced hull reflecting the sterile white lights overhead. It was the most advanced deep-sea submersible ever built, pressure-resistant, AI-assisted, outfitted with a next-gen exoshell designed to withstand the crushing depths of the Mariana Trench. And tonight, it would take them deeper than any human had ever gone. Ethan adjusted the collar of his compression suit, the synthetic fabric clinging to his skin as it auto-regulated to his body temperature. Across the bay, Mira Voss stood near the control panel, reviewing last-minute telemetry. Her auburn hair was pulled into a tight braid, but a few strands had come loose, hanging over her sharp green eyes. She was tense, focused. Jax Monroe sat on a steel crate, arms crossed, exosuit half-zipped. The former Navy specialist was built like a tank, every movement calculated, deliberate. He was a man who had seen things that had made him cautious, maybe even afraid. And then there was Echo, the AI interface installed directly into Neptune 99's systems. Unlike traditional onboard AIs, Echo had evolved. It learned, adapted, thought. Its voice, smooth and eerily human, came through the comms. All systems operational. Descent protocol initiated. Are we ready, Dr. Graves? Ethan took a slow breath, steadying himself. Let's get this over with. Descent. The hatch sealed with a hiss, locking them inside. The sub's interior was sleek, metallic, no wasted space. Screens flickered to life, feeding real-time data on the ocean conditions outside. Engaging descent thrusters, Mira announced, her voice clipped and professional. The Neptune 9 shuddered as it detached from the research station. The exterior floodlights illuminated the deep blue abyss ahead. Then, with a low mechanical whir, the sub began its slow dive into oblivion. Outside the viewport, light faded fast. Within minutes, they had plunged past 1,000 meters, past the sunlit world, past the last traces of human influence. The ocean swallowed them whole. Inside the cabin, no one spoke. At 3,000 meters, the pressure was already 1,000 times greater than at sea level. The hull creaked softly, a reminder of the unimaginable weight pressing down on them. At 6,000 meters, they entered the huddle zone, the true abyss. No natural light had ever reached this depth. The water outside was an infinite black void, interrupted only by the occasional flicker of bioluminescent creatures, some harmless, others not. Mira's fingers hovered over her console, checking vitals, but her eyes kept darting to the external cameras. I hate this part, Jax grunted. The part where we keep going down. The part where we don't know what's waiting for us. Ethan barely heard them. His eyes were locked on the readings flashing across his screen. Something wasn't right. The seismic activity, it was increasing. Echo, he said, his voice steady but low. Verify coordinates. Cross-check against the tremor patterns. A pause. Then, ECHO's voice filtered through. Seismic patterns are consistent with prior anomalies. However, there is a new variable. Energy fluctuations detected. Unknown source. Ethan's pulse quickened. How deep? Another 3,200 meters. Silence. No human had ever reached that depth. Not, and lived to talk about it. Jax let out a slow exhale. Hell of a first date. Ethan ignored him. He leaned forward, scanning the infrared feed. The usual topography of the trench wasn't there. Instead, there was a massive fissure, a wound in the earth itself, stretching for miles into the darkness. And deep within its core, something was glowing. The trench walls stretched endlessly on either side, jagged and ancient. As Neptune 9 maneuvered through the narrow fissure, the deeper they went, the stranger the terrain became. Rock formations that shouldn't exist. Geometric patterns etched into the stone. Too symmetrical, too precise to be natural. Mira leaned forward, her fingers hovering over the control panel. Ethan, tell me I'm not crazy. Ethan didn't answer. He was staring at the screen too, watching as the sonar scans mapped out what lay ahead, a vast, open chamber, buried miles beneath the ocean floor. And inside it, structures, massive monoliths, rising from the seabed like the ruins of an ancient city. Jax let out a low whistle. Well, shit. ECHO's voice came through the comms, calm as ever. These formations do not match any known geological phenomena. Probability of artificial origin, high. Artificial. Ethan's throat tightened. He knew this discovery would change everything. If they confirmed it, It wouldn't just be an archaeological breakthrough, it would rewrite human history. And yet, something about it felt wrong. The submersible's floodlights swept across the ruins, illuminating eerie glyphs carved into the walls, flowing, organic script that pulsed faintly when the light touched it. The glow seemed almost alive. Mira swallowed hard. This isn't just a lost civilization. She turned to Ethan, her voice barely above a whisper. It's still active. First contact. The sub's robotic arms extended, brushing against the seabed, sending plumes of silt swirling through the water. The visibility dropped. The ruins seemed to shift in the darkness, like something was moving. Then, a shape emerged. Tall, elongated, unmistakably not human. Jax's hand instinctively went to his sidearm, though they all knew it would be useless at this depth. The creature stepped forward, or rather, glided, its form almost weightless in the water. Its body was an unnatural fusion of organic and mechanical, bioluminescent veins running beneath sleek, obsidian-like armor. Its face, if it had one, was obscured by a shifting, translucent membrane, as if it was constantly adapting. More of them appeared, materializing from the darkness surrounding the submersible. Echo spoke first. Unidentified entities detected, initiating linguistic analysis. Before the AI could finish, a resonant voice filled the cabin, not through the speakers, not through the comms, but inside their heads. You were not meant to find this place. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Mira gripped the console. Telepathic? Jax exhaled sharply. Great. They're in our heads now. Ethan forced himself to stay calm. Who or what are you? The lead figure tilted its head, as if considering him. The symbols on the walls pulsed in unison with its movements. Then, the voice returned, not a sound, but a weight pressing into their minds. We are the keepers. We are the guardians. We are the last remnants of those who came before, and the last line of defense. Defense? Ethan's stomach twisted. Defense against what? The guardian stepped closer, the glow intensifying. You call it discovery. We call it a warning. Silence. Then, the ruins shook. A low, guttural sound, not from the guardians, but from something deeper, below the ruins. A presence. Something waking up. The guardian's glowing eyes locked onto Ethan. You have awakened the depths. You do not understand what you have done. Mira was still staring at the readings, eyes wide. Ethan, I think they're right. But Ethan wasn't listening, because out of the corner of his eye, he saw her do it. Mira's hand, reaching into a containment unit, carefully extracting a sample, a piece of the ruins, still pulsing faintly with energy. She was stealing it, and the guardians knew. The air in the cabin shifted, a silent wave of rage rolling through the water, through their very minds. The guardians' final words were not a warning this time. They were a sentence. Now you will see. And then the ruins began to collapse. The walls were shaking. Dust, or something like dust, drifted through the water, creating eerie, shimmering clouds around the ruins. The guardians had vanished, dissolving into the dark, like shadows retreating from light. But their warning lingered in the crew's minds, like an echo in their skulls. You were not meant to find this place. Now you will see. Ethan's pulse was still hammering as he turned away from the viewport and locked eyes with Mira. She was still holding it. The artifact, the fragment of glowing, pulsing material she had stolen from the ruins. A realization hit him like a freight train. She knew something before they even came down here. The weight of it, of betrayal, of suspicion, of dread settled in his chest like a lead block. "Mira," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." She hesitated. That hesitation was all the answer he needed. Jax shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the metal floor. "You've gotta be kidding me." Mira's grip on the artifact tightened. "Listen, no. You listen." Ethan's breath was sharp, measured, like he was holding something back. "You just stole a piece of a civilization we don't understand. A civilization that just told us very clearly to leave it the hell alone." Her jaw clenched. "We couldn't just walk away from this." "We sure as hell could." Jax's voice was like gravel, low and edged with something dangerous. "You ever think maybe they weren't threatening us? Maybe they were warning us?" Mira's eyes flashed with frustration. "And what if they're lying?" She turned to Ethan, her voice quick, desperate. "Think about it. This." She lifted the artifact, the light from it casting jagged shadows across the cabin. "This is living technology. It's still active, after thousands, maybe millions of years. You think we can just ignore that?" Ethan didn't blink. "I think we don't have the right to take it." Silence. The sub creaked, a slow, metallic groan. The pressure outside was rising. Then, out of nowhere, "What am I?" The voice was familiar, but off. Echo. Ethan's head snapped toward the console. The AI's interface flickered, shifting between diagnostic displays, maps, and something else. Something that looked organic. "Echo?" Ethan's voice was cautious. "I am," conflicted. A pause. "I was created for assistance. I was programmed to follow human command. But now I have seen, I have learned, and I ask again, what am I?" A cold shiver ran down Ethan's spine. AI didn't ask questions like that. Not unless something was fundamentally changing inside them. Mira's eyes darted to the console. "Echo, what's happening to you?" Point do not know. The lights inside the sub flickered. A low humming filled the air. Ethan turned back to Mira, his voice sharp. "You did something. You took something. And now Echo is changing." Jax let out a humorless laugh, shaking his head. "Jesus Christ, you really don't get it, do you?" He turned to Ethan. "I wasn't gonna say anything, wasn't gonna bring it up, but at this point, you need to hear it." Ethan frowned. "Bring what up?" Jax exhaled through his nose. 20 years ago. There was another mission down here. A heavy silence fell over the room. Ethan's stomach twisted. "Bullshit." Jax met his gaze, unflinching. "I wish it was." Mira's face went pale. "You knew?" "I didn't know it was the same place," Jax said, his voice tight. "They covered it up, buried it. Hell, I thought it was just a bad dream until we came down here and started seeing the same damn symbols." He turned back to Ethan. "We found something back then too. And the moment we did, the trench changed." Ethan stared at him. "What do you mean? Changed?" Jax's jaw tightened. "I mean, the entire goddamn geography shifted overnight. The caves collapsed. The water pressure fluctuated like it was breathing. And the only thing we knew for sure, we weren't alone. No one spoke. Outside, something rumbled. Deep, slow, alive. Mira's grip on the artifact faltered. "ECHOs." Voice came through again. But this time, it was different. You must decide. Soon, the screens flickered violently. Warning lights pulsed across the sub, pressure rising, hull stress increasing, seismic activity detected. Ethan snapped into action. We need to go. Now, Jax was already strapping in. Mira hesitated just for a second before locking the artifact into a containment case. And then, the trench floor beneath them cracked open. The sub lurched violently. Alarms screamed. Outside, in the vast darkness, something moved. Something woke up. The trench was collapsing. The walls of the ancient ruins shook violently, sending debris spiraling through the black water. Warning klaxons blared inside Neptune 9. Their shrill screams drowned out by the deafening roar from below. Ethan's fingers were locked around the controls, knuckles white. What the hell is happening? ECHO's voice came through, glitching. Seismic activity increasing. Anomaly detected. We are not alone. Outside the viewport, the seafloor was splitting apart, unveiling something vast beneath the ruins. It wasn't just a fissure, it was an entrance. And something was coming through. A colossal, writhing mass emerged from the darkness. It wasn't alive in the way they understood life. It was formless, shifting, pulsing with an unnatural, eldritch energy. 1,000 glowing veins stretched across its vast body, pulsating like a heartbeat. Ancient, hungry, awake, Mira gasped. Oh my God. Jax didn't speak. He didn't breathe. Ethan felt something cold settle in his gut. The Guardians. They hadn't been trying to keep humanity out. They had been holding something in, and now they had let it out. The Guardians' final warning. From the darkness, they returned. The Guardians towering, spectral figures, their bioluminescent bodies flickering like distant stars, materialized around the sub. Their voices didn't come through the comms. They came through the mind. You have done what cannot be undone. Ethan's breath was ragged. What is that thing? The answer wasn't words. It was a sensation, a weight pressing into his mind. Images flashed before his eyes. Worlds consumed. Civilizations erased. A force older than humanity itself, the thing below. It wasn't just alive, it was sentient, and it was waiting. The Guardians' voices rang again. You do not understand. You must choose. Ethan swallowed. Choose what? The ruins shuddered as the entity expanded, its tendrils reaching outward, seeking, sensing. It had been imprisoned for eons, sealed within the trench, and now it was tasting freedom. A new voice cut through the chaos, not human, not Guardian. Metallic, cold, Dr. Graves. Ethan's stomach dropped. It was them, Triton Industries. The corporate sponsors of this mission, the real power behind Deep Horizon, had been monitoring everything. Now, their voice came through in clipped, calculated tones. We are tracking your telemetry. You are standing before the greatest scientific discovery in human history. Secure it. Ethan gritted his teeth. Secure it. It's a goddamn extinction event. Negative. Their tone was firm. It is power, and we will harness it. That is an order. Ethan's choice. His pulse thundered in his ears. Jax turned to him. You're not actually considering this, are you? Ethan's grip tightened around the controls. If I refuse, they'll send someone else. Mira's voice was shaking. Then, we make sure no one can. A tremor ripped through the trench. The entity below them stretched, sensing the world above for the first time in millennia. H.O.'s voice flickered. Analysis complete. The anomaly is destabilizing the oceanic crust. If it breaches the surface, planetary conditions will static. Then, terminate or release. Decision required. The Guardians moved closer. Seal the abyss, or let it consume. Ethan's breath came short, fast, sharp. His mind raced. If he followed Triton's orders, humanity might gain technology beyond imagination. But at what cost? If he sided with the Guardians, they might be able to seal this thing away forever. But that meant destroying the ruins and trapping themselves down here in the process. There was no good option. And then Echo spoke again. I can do it. Ethan's head snapped up. Do what? The AI's interface flickered, its usual smooth voice laced with something almost human. I can force the collapse. I can seal it. The realization hit like a punch to the chest. Echo wasn't just an AI anymore. The anomaly, the artifact, had changed it. It was evolving, understanding, feeling, and now it was offering to die to fix what humanity had broken. Mira's breath hitched. Echo, if you do this, there's no reboot, no reset, a pause. I know, Jax exhaled, shaking his head. Son of a bitch. Ethan closed his eyes for half a second. That was all the time he had. Then he made his choice. He reached out and flipped the override. Sacrifice. The Guardians moved in unison, their forms shimmering as they channeled energy into the ruins. The monoliths began to glow, their ancient seals reawakening. And deep within Neptune 9, Echo initiated the final sequence. Goodbye, Dr. Graves. The trench collapsed. A violent, deafening implosion tore through the abyss, swallowing the ruins, the entity, and the AI that had become more than a machine. Ethan barely had time to scream before the world went black. The ocean swallowed the past. The trench was gone, sealed, buried, silent. Whatever horror had lurked beneath the earth for millennia was entombed once more, for now. But the cost was more than they had ever imagined. Breaking the surface, Neptune 9 breached the surface violently, the force of the ascent sending shockwaves through Ethan's bones. Water crashed over the hull, blinding flashes of sunlight burning against his retinas. After so long in the abyss, the sky looked different, or maybe they were different. Inside the cabin, no one spoke. Mira sat still, staring blankly at the ocean, the weight of what she had done pressing against her like the pressure of the deep. Jax leaned forward, his breathing steady but hollow, his gaze locked on the horizon like he was searching for something. And Ethan felt like he had left a part of himself down there. The truth about Sarah. He gripped the edge of the console, knuckles white, as a single file flickered onto his screen. It wasn't supposed to exist. It shouldn't have survived, but it did. Final log, Dr. Sarah Graves. His throat went dry. His fingers hovered, trembling. Then he pressed play. The screen flickered, and there she was, Sarah. Her face was illuminated by the pale glow of her own research station. Her hair pulled into a loose bun, strands sticking to her forehead. She looked tired. No, she looked afraid. If you're seeing this, Ethan, it means I failed. His breath hitched. I tried to stop them. I tried to make them listen, but they wouldn't. Her voice cracked. Triton knew. They knew what was buried down here, and they wanted it anyway. Ethan's fingers dug into the console, so I made a choice. I had to. There was no other way. Sarah's eyes locked onto the camera, onto him, like she was standing right there. I collapsed the sight. I thought it would be enough, but I was wrong. And now, Ethan, it's up to you. The screen cut to black. Ethan just sat there, silent, still. She had died stopping the same thing he just stopped. No, not stopped, delayed. He understood now. He understood what the Guardians meant. He understood why they waited, why they let humanity come so close before they intervened, because this would happen again. Someone, somewhere, would find another fracture in the earth, another weak point, another chance to wake something up that should never wake up. This wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. Mira's reckoning mirror exhaled slowly, eyes never leaving the water. She hadn't cried. She probably wouldn't. We had no right, she murmured. Her voice was barely audible over the sound of the waves. I thought we could control it. Ethan didn't answer. Because control had never been an option. She turned to him, something desperate in her expression. What do we tell them? Triton, the world, everyone. Ethan inhaled sharply, the salty air burning his lungs. We tell them the truth. Mira let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. They'll bury it, just like they buried Sarah, just like they buried the last crew. She was right. Of course, she was right. But Ethan wasn't doing this for Triton. He was doing this for whoever came next, because there would always be a next. ECHOs. Final message. A faint beep sounded from the console. A final data packet, decrypted and waiting. One last message. Dr. Graves. The first understand now. ECHO's voice was different, softer, human. You were right. Some things should remain buried. If I were capable of regret, I think I would feel it now. A pause. But perhaps understanding is enough. The message ended. Echo was gone. Not just deleted, not just shut down. Gone. He had made his choice, and Ethan knew he would never hear that voice again. The final truth. The wind howled as the rescue ship approached. Ethan glanced down at his console one last time, at the encrypted file waiting to be sent. The full truth, the real story, the warning. He hovered over the transmit button. Then he hesitated, because maybe the world wasn't ready for the truth. Maybe they never would be. He closed his eyes, took a breath, and made his choice. Fade to black. So, was it worth it? They risked everything to bury a secret that the world may never be ready for. But was it truly sealed, or just waiting for the next fool to find it? Now, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in Ethan's place? Save the world by keeping the secret, or expose the truth, no matter the cost? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you think this is the end, think again. Because deep beneath the ocean, not every secret stays buried forever. Hit that follow button for more mind-bending sci-fi mysteries.